My name is Daniel Reyes, 42 years old, and I sit here in my small apartment in Laredo, Texas, just 15 miles from the Mexican border, staring at an empty chair where my daughter Sofia used to do her homework. The silence in this place cuts deeper than any bullet wound I've ever taken, and trust me, I've taken plenty. I am no longer the Navy SEAL who could slip through enemy lines like smoke, nor the sniper who could drop a target from 1,000 yards out. I'm just Daniel now, a broken father trying to piece together how everything went so wrong so fast. But to tell you this story, I need to take you back to before it all fell apart, when I still believed I could protect the one person who mattered most. It was a Tuesday evening in March, unseasonably warm for the season, when Sofia came bouncing through our front door with that defiant energy that reminded me so much of her mother. At 16, she had Elena's dark eyes and stubborn streak, but thankfully none of my ghosts haunting her sleep. She dropped her backpack by the door with a thud that made me wince. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "Dad, I'm going to the mall with Jessica tonight," she announced, not asked, as she raided the refrigerator for leftovers. I looked up from the security contract I was reviewing, another mind-numbing corporate gig that paid the bills but felt like slow death after years of real missions. "Which mall? How long? Who's driving?" She rolled those dark eyes at me, the same way she'd been doing since she turned 14 and decided I was more prison warden than father. "The outlet mall, a few hours, and Jessica got her license last month, remember?" "That's a no on Jessica driving," I said, trying to keep my voice level. The kid had gotten her license exactly 37 days ago, not that I was counting, but I'd seen too many 18-year-olds die from roadside bombs to trust a 16-year-old behind 2 tons of metal. "I'll drop you off and pick you up." "God, Dad, you're so paranoid," Sofia shot back, slamming the fridge door harder than necessary. "I'm not going to get kidnapped at the mall. This isn't Afghanistan." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, and I saw that flash of regret cross her face as soon as they left her mouth. She knew about the nightmares. The way I'd wake up in cold sweats, checking the locks on the doors, the reason I kept a loaded Glock in every room of our apartment. "Soph, I'm sorry," I started, but she was already grabbing her purse and heading for the door. "Fine, whatever. Pick me up at 9, she called over her shoulder. And then she was gone, leaving me staring at that empty chair again. I should have followed my gut. I should have driven her myself, stayed close, kept watch like the operator I used to be. Instead, I let her walk out that door because I was trying so damn hard to be a normal dad to a normal kid in a normal world. 3 hours later, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize, and everything changed forever. The voice on the other end of that phone call was Jessica, Sofia's friend, and she was crying so hard I could barely make out the words between her sobs. "Mr. Reyes, something happened. Sofia's gone. They took her. There were these men in a van." I felt my blood turn to ice water, that same cold clarity that used to wash over me before a mission, except this time it wasn't some faceless enemy in a foreign country. This was my daughter, my Sofia, and I was 15 miles away doing nothing while she disappeared into the night. "Jessica, where are you now?" My voice came out steady, controlled, even though my hands were shaking as I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. "At the mall, by the parking lot near Macy's. The police are here, but they're asking so many questions, and I don't know what to tell them, and Sofia was just walking to the car, and then these guys grabbed her." I was already in my truck, engine roaring to life, speeding through the empty streets toward the outlet mall with my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to break free. 23 minutes. That's how long it took me to get there, and I counted every single second because in my world, in the world I used to live in, 23 minutes was enough time for everything to go to hell. The parking lot was lit up like a crime scene, which I suppose it was. Police cars, ambulances, crime scene tape fluttering in the evening breeze like yellow ghosts. I found Jessica sitting in the back of an ambulance, a blanket around her shoulders, still crying. She looked so young, so broken, and all I could think was, that should be Sofia sitting there, safe, crying about some teenage drama, instead of God knows where with God knows who. Mr. Reyes? The voice belonged to a woman in her 30s, Hispanic, wearing an FBI windbreaker that looked like it had seen better days. I'm Agent Carla Morales, FBI. I need to ask you some questions. What do you know? I cut her off, not caring about protocol or politeness or any of the civilian bullshit that didn't matter when my daughter was missing. Agent Morales studied me with sharp, dark eyes, taking in the way I stood, the way I scanned the parking lot, automatically checking sight lines and escape routes, probably recognizing something in my posture that screamed military. We have witnesses who saw 3 men force your daughter into a white van with Texas plates. The vehicle headed south toward the border. South, toward Mexico. Toward cartel territory. My stomach dropped into my boots because I knew what that meant, knew the kind of animals who operated in that gray zone where American law enforcement couldn't reach and Mexican corruption ran deeper than the Rio Grande. Sir, I need you to understand something, Agent Morales continued, her voice gentle but firm. If this is cartel-related, and all signs point that direction, you cannot go after them yourself. I know your background, Mr. Reyes. I know what you're capable of. But this isn't Afghanistan or Iraq. This is different. I looked at her for a long moment, this federal agent who thought she understood what I was capable of, what I would do to get Sofia back. She had no idea. None of them did. Agent Morales, I said quietly, with all due respect, you don't know me at all. 24 hours after Sofia vanished, I was sitting in a diner outside San Antonio across from Marcus Kane, my old SEAL teammate, who looked like he'd aged 10 years since I'd last seen him. His hair had gone completely gray, and there were new lines around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and ghosts that followed him home from deployments. But his hands were still steady as he slid a manila folder across the greasy table. "Daniel, you sure about this?" Marcus asked, his voice carrying that same gravelly tone that used to keep us calm during firefights. I opened the folder and stared at the surveillance photos inside. Miguel El Lobo Vargas, the cartel lieutenant who ran kidnapping operations along the Texas border. The intelligence Marcus had gathered through his private security contacts painted a picture of a predator who enjoyed the hunt as much as the kill. Former Mexican special forces, turned mercenary, turned cartel enforcer. He specialized in taking American citizens for ransom or leverage, and he was very, very good at it. "This bastard has Sofia," I said, studying Vargas's cold eyes in the photograph. "That makes it personal." Marcus leaned back in the booth, studying me the way he used to before we'd go into a hot zone. "You remember what happened to Jackson when he let it get personal? When his brother got killed by that IED and he went off mission?" I remembered. Staff Sergeant Tommy Jackson had disobeyed orders, gone hunting for revenge, and walked straight into an ambush that cost him his life and nearly got the rest of our team killed. But this was different. This was my daughter. Jackson wasn't thinking straight. I am. "Are you?" Marcus pulled out another photo, This one showing a compound near Nuevo Laredo, just across the Mexican border. Concrete walls, guard towers, razor wire. It looked like every terrorist stronghold we'd ever assaulted, except this one was holding my 16-year-old girl. Because what I'm seeing is a father who's about to charge into hell with nothing but rage and rusty training. I closed the folder and met his eyes. Then come with me and make sure I don't do anything stupid. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled that wolfish grin I remembered from our deployment days. Hell, Danny boy, somebody's got to keep you alive long enough to get your girl back.
As we walked out of that diner, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years of civilian life. Purpose. Direction. The cold clarity of a mission with only one acceptable outcome. Sofia was coming home, even if I had to paint the border red to make it happen. While I was planning my daughter's rescue, Sofia was 300 miles away in a concrete room that smelled of mold and fear, trying to comfort a 12-year-old boy named Carlos who hadn't stopped crying since they'd thrown him into the cell 2 days earlier. She told me this story later, when the nightmares were still fresh, and she needed to talk about what happened in that place where hope went to die. The room had no windows, just a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling that cast harsh shadows on the cracked walls. There were 2 mattresses on the floor, stained and torn, and a bucket in the corner that served as their bathroom. Sofia had counted the hours by listening to the guards' footsteps outside their door, memorizing their routines the way I'd taught her to pay attention to patterns when we went camping, back when the most dangerous thing in our lives was getting lost in the woods. "My dad's gonna come for us," she whispered to Carlos, pulling him close when he started shaking again. The boy was small for his age, all elbows and knees, with dark eyes that had seen too much too young. His parents were migrant workers who'd tried to cross into Texas looking for a better life, and now their son was paying the price for that dream. "How do you know?" Carlos asked in Spanish, his voice barely audible. Sofia smiled, and I imagine it looked just like her mother's smile, the one that could light up a room even in the darkest moments. "Because he's Daniel Reyes, and he never gives up. He's killed bad men before, lots of them. He won't let them keep us here." Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She didn't know about my nightmares, about the times I woke up screaming Elena's name, about the bottles of whiskey I'd hidden around our apartment to quiet the voices of the men I'd killed. All she knew was that her father was a soldier, and soldiers came home. On the 3rd day, Miguel Vargas came to see them. Sofia described him as tall and lean, with dead eyes and hands that moved like snakes when he talked. He crouched down in front of her, studying her face the way a collector might examine a valuable piece of art. "You have your father's eyes," he said in perfect English, his voice soft and cold. "Stubborn eyes. That's good. It means he'll come for you, just like I want him to." Sofia met his stare without flinching, channeling every ounce of Reyes' pride she'd inherited. "When he finds you, he's gonna kill you." Vargas laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "I'm counting on him trying, little wolf. That's when I'll show him what it feels like to lose everything that matters." But Sofia wasn't just bait in a trap. She was a Reyes, and Reyes women didn't break easy. I hadn't spoken to my father Victor Reyes in 3 years, not since Sofia's quinceañera when he'd gotten drunk on cheap beer and told me I was raising her too soft, that the world would eat her alive if I didn't toughen her up. Now I was standing on the porch of his weathered ranch house outside Corpus Christi, swallowing my pride because I needed something only he could give me. Victor opened the door looking older than his 68 years, his once powerful frame bent by time and too many bottles. His gray hair hung limp around a face carved by decades of disappointment, and when he saw me standing there, his expression didn't change one bit. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," he said, not moving aside to let me enter. "Let me guess, you need something." "Sophia's been taken," I said, cutting straight to the point because dancing around the truth wasn't going to bring my daughter home. "Cartel. I need your help." Something shifted in his weathered features, a crack in the armor he'd built around his heart. Victor had raised me alone after Mom died when I was 8, and despite all our problems, all the years of silence and anger, Sofia was his granddaughter, the only good thing our broken family had ever produced. He stepped aside without a word, and I followed him into a living room that smelled of cigarettes and regret. The walls were covered with faded photographs from his Vietnam days, young soldiers who'd never made it home, mixed with pictures of Sofia from over the years. Birthday parties, school plays, Christmas mornings when she was still small enough to believe in magic.
"Sit," he said, disappearing into the kitchen and returning with 2 cups of coffee that could strip paint. "Tell me what happened." I told him everything. The kidnapping, Agent Morales' warnings, Marcus and our surveillance of Vargas's network. When I finished, Victor was quiet for a long time, staring at a photo of Sofia on her first day of high school, all smiles and innocence. "You know why I was so hard on you growing up?" he asked finally. "Because I knew someday you'd face something like this, and I wanted you to be ready. The world's full of wolves, Daniel, and sheep don't survive." He walked to an old desk in the corner and pulled out a manila envelope, thick with documents and photographs. "Miguel Vargas isn't just any cartel lieutenant. He used to work with smugglers I dealt with back in the 80s when I was running security for oil companies down south. I know his roots, his safe houses, his weaknesses." Victor handed me the envelope, his calloused fingers brushing mine. "But Daniel, if you go after him, you'd better be prepared to become something worse than he is. Because men like Vargas, they don't understand mercy." I looked at my father, really looked at him, and saw myself in 30 years if I let the war consume everything good in my life. "I'm already there, old man." The stash house was a converted warehouse on the outskirts of Laredo, surrounded by rusted chain-link fence and the kind of silence that comes before violence. Marcus and I had been watching it for 6 hours through night vision scopes, counting guards, memorizing patrol patterns, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The intelligence Victor had given us pointed to this place as one of Vargas's holding facilities for kidnapped victims before they disappeared across the border. 3 guards outside, maybe 4 inside. Marcus whispered through our comms, his voice steady as granite. "Same rotation every 40 minutes. Window of opportunity opens in 60 seconds. I checked my rifle one more time, the familiar weight of the weapon bringing back muscle memory I'd tried so hard to forget. 3 years of civilian life melted away like morning fog, and I was Petty Officer Reyes again, moving through the darkness like death itself. The first guard never saw me coming. One moment he was lighting a cigarette by the loading dock, the next he was unconscious on the concrete, zip-tied and gagged. Marcus took the second guard with the same silent efficiency, a ghost in tactical gear who'd learned his craft in the same hellholes I had. Inside, we found them. 7 people chained to the walls like animals, including a woman who couldn't have been older than 20 and an old man who reminded me of Victor. But Sofia wasn't there. Carlos wasn't there either. Just more victims in Vargas's sick game, more families torn apart by greed and violence. "Where are the others?" I grabbed the remaining guard by his shirt, pressing my knife to his throat. He was young, maybe 19, with tattoos covering his arms and fear filling his eyes. "They moved them yesterday, across the border. El Larbo wanted them at the main compound." "Which compound?" The blade pressed deeper, drawing a thin line of blood. "Daniel," Marcus's voice cut through my rage. "Easy, brother. We need him alive." But I was already gone, lost in that red haze that used to come over me in combat when the enemy had taken something precious. This punk had been guarding stolen children, profiting from misery, and every instinct I had screamed to end him right there. "The compound in Nuevo Laredo," the guard gasped. "But you'll never make it out alive. El Lobo knows you're coming.
He's been waiting for you." I stepped back, breathing hard, feeling Marcus's hand on my shoulder anchoring me to something resembling sanity. Around us, the rescued victims were crying, some in Spanish, some in English, all of them thanking God they were going home. But my daughter was still out there, still in the hands of a monster who knew I was coming. Then let's not keep him waiting. Crossing into Mexico wasn't like the movies. No dramatic chase scenes or shootouts at checkpoints. Marcus knew a coyote named Jesus who smuggled people both ways across the Rio Grande for the right price. And $2,000 later, we were wading through muddy water in the dead of night, carrying waterproof bags with enough firepower to level a city block. "You sure about this, Danny?" Marcus asked as we crouched in the reeds on the Mexican side, watching Cartel spotters patrol the riverbank with AK-47s slung over their shoulders. "Once we're in Nuevo Laredo, we're in their world. No backup, no extraction, no rules."
I was staring at a photograph of Sofia I kept in my chest pocket, her smile bright and innocent from her 16th birthday just 2 months ago. The same smile I'd failed to protect when she needed me most. "She's my daughter," I said, and that was all the explanation either of us needed. The safe house Marcus had arranged was a crumbling motel on the outskirts of the city, run by a former Mexican army sergeant who'd grown sick of watching his country bleed. Carlos Mendoza was his name, a short, stocky man with bullet scars across his chest and hatred for the cartels burning in his dark eyes. "El Lobo has your daughter at the compound on Calle Revolucion," he told us, over glasses of tequila that burned like liquid fire. "But it's a fortress, man. 20 guards, maybe more. Motion sensors, cameras, razor wire. You go in there, you don't come out." My hands were shaking slightly as I lifted the glass, not from fear, but from something else entirely. The nightmares were coming back stronger now, mixing with memories of Kandahar and Fallujah until I couldn't tell the difference between past and present. Elena's face kept flashing through my mind, the way she looked in the hospital bed before the cancer took her, making me promise to keep Sofia safe. "Daniel," Marcus was studying me with those sharp eyes that had kept us both alive through 3 deployments. "When's the last time you slept? Really slept?" I couldn't remember. 2 days? 3? Time had become meaningless since Sofia vanished, replaced by an endless cycle of planning, surveillance, and the kind of rage that ate you from the inside out. "I keep seeing her face," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Elena's. The night she died, she made me promise to protect Sofia no matter what, and I failed." "No," Marcus said firmly, "you haven't failed until you stop fighting, and we both know you're too stubborn to do that." Outside, the city of Nuevo Laredo sprawled like a cancer under the desert stars, full of predators and prey, where my 16-year-old daughter was waiting for her father to bring her home or die trying. The compound on Calle Revolucion looked exactly like the intelligence photos, except for one crucial detail that Carlos Mendoza had gotten wrong. There weren't 20 guards patrolling the perimeter. There were none. The place sat in the pre-dawn darkness like a sleeping beast, too quiet, too still, too perfect. "This is wrong," Marcus whispered through our comms as we crouched behind a burned-out car across the street. But I was already moving, my rifle up and ready, because somewhere inside those concrete walls, my daughter was waiting. Every instinct I'd honed over a decade of combat operations was screaming that this was a trap, but the part of me that was Sofia's father didn't care. She was in there, and that was all that mattered. The front gate was unlocked. The motion sensors were disabled. Even the razor wire had been cut in convenient places, creating a clear path to the main building. If I'd been thinking like a SEAL instead of a desperate father, I would have pulled back and reassessed. Instead, I walked straight into a Lobo's web. They were waiting for us in the courtyard, at least a dozen sicarios with automatic weapons trained on the doorway we'd just breached. In the center of them stood Miguel Vargas, and he was smiling like a man who'd won the lottery. "Señor Reyes," he said, his voice carrying that same cold amusement Sofia had described. "Welcome to Mexico. I trust the accommodations are to your liking." The first shots came from the rooftops, muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness like deadly fireworks. Marcus went down hard, blood spreading across his tactical vest as he tried to find cover behind an overturned table. I returned fire on full auto, years of training taking over as I moved and shot and moved again, but there were too many of them in too many positions. "Your daughter is alive," Vargas called out over the gunfire, "for now. But every second you resist, I promise you she suffers. Drop your weapons." I could hear Marcus cursing in pain somewhere behind me, could smell cordite and blood in my own fear. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I was Daniel Reyes, Navy SEAL, the man who'd survived Kandahar and Baghdad and a dozen other hellholes. I wasn't supposed to walk into an ambush like some rookie straight out of basic training.
But that's exactly what I'd done, because the wolf had used my love for Sofia against me. "Danny, get out of here," Marcus gasped, his voice weak but still fighting. "This isn't over. Find another way." Vargas laughed, the sound echoing off the concrete walls like breaking glass. "There is no other way, my friend. There is only surrender, or watch everyone you love die." I escaped that compound by doing something no sane operator would ever do. I grabbed a fragmentation grenade from Marcus's vest, pulled the pin, and threw it into the fuel tank of a pickup truck parked 20 feet away. The explosion lit up the night like the 4th of July and gave me exactly the chaos I needed to drag Marcus out of there while Vargas's men dove for cover. 12 hours later, I was sitting in a hospital room in Nuevo Laredo, watching my best friend struggle to breathe through a punctured lung when Agent Carla Morales walked through the door like an avenging angel in an FBI windbreaker. "You stupid, reckless son of a bitch," she said, but there was no anger in her voice, just exhaustion. "Do you have any idea how many laws you've broken in the past week? How many international incidents you've caused?" Marcus tried to laugh and ended up coughing blood. "Tell her about the explosive exit strategy," he wheezed. "Shut up and rest," I told him, then turned to Agent Morales. "What are you doing here?" She pulled up a chair and sat down, studying my face like she was trying to decide whether I was completely insane or just mostly insane. "My daughter is 12 years old. If someone took her, I'd probably do exactly what you're doing. So instead of arresting you, I'm going to help you finish this." She handed me a tablet computer loaded with satellite imagery of another compound, this one deeper in the desert outside the city. "Real-time intelligence from a DEA drone. Vargas moved your daughter and the boy here after last night's fireworks. 24 guards, but they're spread thin. Motion sensors offline for maintenance. You've got a window, maybe 2 hours before they're back online." I studied the compound layout, memorizing every detail the way I used to before insertion missions. Guard towers, escape routes, blind spots in their coverage. This time, I wouldn't let emotion override training. "There's something else," Morales said quietly. "The boy, Carlos, he managed to get a message out through one of the guards' cell phones. Your daughter has been teaching the other prisoners how to fight back. She's organized them, given them hope. She's her father's daughter, Daniel." For the first time in days, I smiled. Sofia wasn't just surviving, she was leading. Elena would have been proud. "Marcus," I said, turning to my wounded friend, "I need you to stay here, get patched up proper." "Like hell," he gasped. "You're not going in there alone." "No," Agent Morales said, standing up. "He's not." Outside, the desert wind carried the smell of dust and distant gunpowder, and somewhere in that wasteland, my daughter was waiting for her father to bring her home. The final compound was a fortress built into a hillside,
all concrete and steel under the merciless desert sun. But fortresses have weaknesses, and I'd spent 15 years learning how to find them. Agent Morales and I moved through the pre-dawn darkness like ghosts, her FBI training blending seamlessly with my SEAL experience as we systematically eliminated sentries. Inside, Sofia had done exactly what I had hoped she would do. When the shooting started, she and Carlos led the other prisoners in a coordinated breakout that split Vargas's attention between us and them. My daughter moved through that chaos like a warrior born, protecting the younger ones while Carlos helped the wounded, both of them showing courage that would have made their grandfathers proud. I found Vargas in the compound's central building, standing over a table covered with maps and photographs of future targets, future families he planned to destroy. When he heard my footsteps, he turned with that same cold smile, a pistol in his hand. "Señor Reyes, right on time. Your daughter is quite remarkable. Such spirit, such fire. It will be a shame to extinguish it." "The only thing getting extinguished today is you," I replied, my rifle trained on his chest. We circled each other in that small room like predators. Him with his handgun, me with my M4, both of us knowing that only one of us would walk out alive. But when the moment came, when I had him dead to rights with a clear shot, something made me hesitate. It was Sofia's voice, cutting through the gunfire outside. "Dad, don't become like him!"
She was standing in the doorway, Carlos beside her, both of them safe, but watching their father balance on the edge of becoming the very monster he was fighting. In that moment, I saw myself through her eyes and understood what Elena had really meant when she made me promise to protect our daughter. She wasn't just talking about physical safety. She was talking about protecting Sofia from having a father consumed by violence. Vargas saw my hesitation and raised his pistol, but he'd forgotten about Agent Morales, who put 3 rounds center mass from the doorway behind him. "Some promises are easier to keep than others," she said quietly. 3 weeks later, I was sitting on the porch of our apartment in Laredo, watching Sofia teach Carlos how to throw a football in our small backyard. The boy was staying with us while immigration sorted out his family situation, and seeing them laugh together reminded me that some battles are won not with bullets, but with the choice to remain human. Sofia came over and sat beside me, her head on my shoulder. "I knew you'd come for us, Dad." "Always," I whispered, holding her close. "Always." Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it'll take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.